Well, we grew up during the Depression in the 30s, and it was hard. My father worked half days. We didn't have, it wasn't a lot of money, and a lot of people were out of work. It's probably one of the biggest depressions they had. But luckily, he was able to work part-time. He worked enough that we were. Of course, I was young, didn't really realize what it was like. But we had a brother and a sister, and the three of us. I thought we had. We'd take short trips and do things together, and that was very interesting. Yeah. Well, I was in high school. I graduated high school in '41, and as they said, I went to back when very few people that I knew in my age or that that went to college. We just wasn't that. So I took an apprenticeship. Was apprenticeship course. My father was a tool and die maker, so I went into this 4-year apprenticeship course before I was in that when the war started. I guess I was in. So. Yes, I was in the Army Corps of Engineers. Well, it was difficult at some time, but then also it was very interesting. There was a lot of things went on that we were able to see, and we got to see what was going on and how these different things and people. It was we saw one of the interesting, of course, we went into Cherbourg right after it had been when they gave up, and we went in there, and one of the things was they would take the French women that had fraternized with the Germans, and they shaved the head, absolutely bald. So they caught them and they get in the town square and they shave their heads. So we see a lot of women running around town with bald heads. So, things like that. And we saw one of the, I guess, saw a wedding. It was very interesting. It was I guess the French get carried away with weddings. So we saw there's some weddings. People, they marched around the street with the bride and groom. So it was a very interesting, we were in Cherbourg for the first Bastille Day, after the big Bastille Day. That's the big French holiday. And of course, when the Germans were, they didn't have anything like that. So the big celebration was Bastille Day. We were there for the first Bastille Day, which was kind of, you see the local markets where they bring things in, and it was very interesting doing different things like that. And we moved constantly all over France and up into Belgium, and we had an interesting. We were outside of Brussels, Belgium, and it was very interesting. Some of these there was a little small cafe that had a bumper. I don't know if you know what a bumper pool is. A bumper pool is a small pool table that's got bumpers in it. Anyway, this was a woman that ran this cafe, and after work we'd go in there, and she'd make us egg sandwiches. And we'd play bumper pool and drink beer and have egg sandwiches. So things like that. It was an interesting time. I think I was back, well, I remember specifically because it happened on a Sunday and nobody much, of course there was no television, and a lot of people, I don't think, listened to the radio all day long. So I think I was we had a basement in our home, and my father was a radio enthusiast, so and I was down there with some kind of a radio that I built, or doing something, and just listening to it with the earphones on it, and that's how I heard about it. But it didn't mean much. Pearl Harbor, where was Pearl Harbor at that point? I didn't have any most people didn't have any idea what it was. Well, there wasn't much. I was kind of amazed at what was going on. I'm wondering what's going to happen now. And of course, the feeling I think I had at that point was Japan being such a small country and the United States being so large, this wasn't going to last very long. Well, that's not the way it happened. Absolutely. If it hadn't happened, we'd have lost 1 million people. The Japanese are fanatic, and they had all of their citizens, even they sharpened sticks, so they would not give up. And that's the thing, the whole thing with this, when these, as we went from island to island, with the, you know, none of the Japanese would ever surrender. There was no surrender, there was no things. And as I say, with the Germans, and they gave up, and we put them in camps, and basically they did the same with our people. About the only thing we really was the Jews. That was the real thing with the Germans. I think they just for some reason or other they didn't. That was a horrible situation with them. But the Japanese did it to everybody. So. I thought it was wonderful. Now we can go home. Not much at that point. There was very little known about them. No, we didn't. There was, you know, I think we found out later that went on, but it was almost nothing. They had people try to get pictures of them from what I read, you know, read later and seen movies about things, but that they tried to, they did have people, I guess, to get in with cameras. They smuggle them in, try to get pictures out. They're terrible times. So, you know, nobody really knew anything about them. Even the Germans that lived in the towns where they're camped, they knew were there, they didn't. Well, war in itself is bad, but you know, it's when you get bad people that just terrible. I mean, it can't. It's funny. There's no other way to settle it. I guess the only thing to say, it's just a terrible situation. I mean.